This system doesn't care. This system doesn't view us as valuable. But we are. Tina is valuable.
The discovery of Fontaine's body in 2014 was one catalyst for the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. But just as troubling as her death was what came before, a string of failures in social services and foster care systems. The many opportunities to help Fontaine came to nothing. As Cameron McIntosh found, those cracks in the system are still there.
Disappointed by the verdict, yes. But on Winnipeg streets, this was about more than just justice for one girl. It was about making sure it doesn't happen again.
People here showed the commitment of Winnipeggers and Manitobans to create change.
For all the frustration here, the anger and the sorrow, there's also an overwhelming feeling that Tina Fontaine was failed, broadly, by society. From age 4, Fontaine was raised by her great aunt. As a young teen, she began acting out, running away. Her aunt looked for help.
Everything I tried to do failed her.
Manitoba's child welfare system got involved. Fontaine, then in Winnipeg, was placed in a downtown hotel. She ran once again. Days before her death, the 15-year-old was stopped by police who failed to recognize she was listed as a missing person.
I would expect them to take that person into their care.
No one put all the dots together until after the girl was found dead. There were changes. Manitoba's child welfare system banned hotel stays for kids in care. But this watchdog says many of the dangers Fontaine faced remain.
We do have a population of children who are at high risk of being exploited and who are being exploited.
I'm horrified of the situation that happened with Tina Fontaine.
Manitoba's current families minister says an overhaul is in the works to keep more families together.
What the evidence suggests is if you invest in earlier intervention as opposed to just focusing on protection, that will make a difference for vulnerable Manitobans.
Then there's the verdict, not guilty. Police worked the case for years, but the evidence just wasn't strong enough for the jury. Another letdown to many here. So today, a promise from leaders to keep pushing for reform.
Now she's going to be a reminder that we have a lot more work to do.
All in memory of a girl lost. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
As Cam mentioned, there are questions tonight about that not guilty verdict and the evidence that led to it. Here's a look at what the jury considered when it acquitted Raymond Cormier. Police arrested Cormier after a 6-month undercover investigation. They heard suspicious things on the wiretaps.
And you lying, that's why she got killed. She got killed, and then she got killed because we found out I found out she was 15 years old.
According to police, that was Cormier's motive. He had sex with her and didn't want to be accused of being a pedophile.
But unfortunately, the girl in fucking Gravesend is screaming in the top of her lungs for me to fucking finish the job. Guess what?
The defense argued different interpretations of the wiretap. She, quote, got killed. But who killed her? Was the job he finished killing her or finding her killer? Witnesses said just before she went missing, Fontaine had an argument with Cormier, worried about her reporting the truck he stole to the police.
Hey, I like to report a blue truck that was stolen earlier today.
Is it your truck?
What?
Is it your truck?
No, he's my friend and he stole it earlier today.
But that wasn't enough. So what about physical evidence? Police looked at every scrap from the apartment where Fontaine had spent time with Cormier, from the truck he stole, from Fontaine's personal effects, the duvet covers she was wrapped in when they found her. Nothing tied Cormier to her murder or even proved she was murdered.
How did Tina die? We don't know whether she died from drowning. We don't know if she died from smothering. We don't know if it was a suicide. There were no signs of violence to the body. There were no signs of self-defense, like you might expect if somebody is fighting off an attacker. So we don't know what circumstances led to her dying.
But what about that duvet cover?
We don't know whose DNA is on that blanket. We know that many of the hairs and the DNA that are found on the blanket belong to somebody. We know they didn't belong to Raymond Cormier.
We can't know what was on the jurors' minds. Is the real killer still out there? Did Cormier do it? Did anybody? The jury may have had suspicions. They also had reasonable doubt. So how did this case even go to trial? They went with something called a direct indictment, and that's where the court skips a preliminary hearing. In a high-profile case, there are legitimate reasons for doing that. But according to Scott Newman, the defense lawyer you just heard from there, in this case, it might have been a mistake.
When you don't have a preliminary inquiry in a case like this, maybe it would have been a case that should not have gone to trial. And maybe it's a situation where had the Crown had that early opportunity to look at this case, they might not have made the decision to prosecute at all.
Now it is up to the Crown to decide if they want to appeal.